really good week so far. I know our players and coaches and their families have really enjoyed the hospitality here at the bowl game. They've done so many things. The hotel and the staff have been tremendous. So we've had about as good a bowl week of preparation as I've seen. So we'll see how that translates Friday.
Yeah, I was going to ask, there are obviously bigger bowls, but as far as, you got 18 to 22-year-olds, this is probably the perfect place for them to be during bowl season with all the theme parks and activities.
There's no doubt about that, because especially the way Dabo has structured things, giving them the opportunity to get some really good practice in, get some training in, but then leaving large blocks of time, which is, as all you know, I mean, that's what's necessary to be able to go and enjoy the park. So having those large blocks of time have given the young men and our staff here time to go and enjoy what Orlando's all about, and it's a great destination.
You have freed up some salary with Coach Morrisley. Have you and Dabo talked about maybe a Brent Venables extension or a raise, or maybe some of the other assistants with Tony and Jeff getting promotions?
We've talked about that, and we'll probably finalize all of that once we get back from the game.
How much of what you did with the committee can you talk about right now?
Our work's still in front. I mean, so you got to play the games, but it was a great experience, and I think that what went into putting that all together and the great work that the College Football Playoff Committee staff did gave the 12 of us the opportunity to really get all the information that we needed and come at it from 12 different directions, but really kind of create a consensus around those 4 teams that ended up playing in the playoff.
Have you received any friendly emails from Baylor or TCU fans talking about your selections?
The only thing I can tell you guys is, the College Football Playoff home base is in Dallas. So we were all leaving from DFW to go back to where we were. So I'm sitting on the airplane, and in the seat in front of us for about the first 30 minutes of the flight were I think they were Baylor fans, just screaming about how the College Football Playoff didn't do them right. And of course, I sat there with my hat down and reading the book and said, "Okay, guys." And luckily, they got off in Atlanta before I did, and that was all I heard. But really, it's been. I think people looked at it and they said, these 4. It's kind of hard to argue with these 4, and we're just moving on from there.
What did you learn the most from this experience, being involved in it, and how it affects or does it help the ACC, Clemson, or anything like that?
Well, first of all, one of the major tenets of being on this committee, whether it was Oliver Luck, Barry Alvarez, Jeff Long, Pat Hayden, or myself, and it's been a huge tenet from the time we all got on the committee, is you leave your conference hat at the door, you leave your school hat at the door, you're here for all of college football, and it's not you're representing this conference or another conference, or certainly not your team, as you're recused when they're speaking about your team. So I don't know from a conference perspective if we learned anything. I just think it was a really good exercise in consensus building and people coming forward with different views. I mean, there were committee members who really liked certain teams. There were others who were a little lukewarm, and sometimes one was able to convince the other. There was a few aha moments along the way. Well, that's a great point. So let's explore that a little further. So. It was a good process. Looking forward to having the opportunity again next year to go through it.
Did it wear people out? You had one guy have to leave sort of in midstream, and you had a guy resign his job the other day. Well, stay on the committee.
I think for Oliver, I think from an athletic director's perspective, what Oliver is going to bring to the NCAA office is incredibly valuable. President Emmert talked about that when he first took the job at the NCAA, of bringing in a practitioner to help work the day-to-day, not only communication, but day-to-day workings of the NCAA office and make it more in line with what happens on a campus. And Oliver, I think, is the perfect guy to do that. He's a great communicator, he's incredibly intelligent, and I think that position is really going to help the communications and the ability to understand both sides of the equation, what the NCAA and the member institutions as a whole are looking to do, and maybe how it affects individual conferences or schools.
Would anybody ever get to see how you voted when you get your final rankings come out, or how you guys did it? Or is that stay kind of quiet?
No, all those will be. None of those were kept. It was just all done.
As far as what you guys learned as a committee, is there something that you say, okay, maybe we can do this better next year?
We're actually all tasked with, by the middle of January, putting together a little paragraph or two on what we thought might help the committee in future years, and we'll pull that all together. We're going to have a conference call as a group later on in January, and then they'll take those ideas, the ones that we agree on that make sense, and they'll move that to the management group, and that's the collegiate commissioners and the athletic director at Notre Dame, and they'll talk about those and see if any of them are feasible.
The thing that's probably the most most talked about with the Clemson fan base is Michigan State being jumped in the final and pushing Clemson down a bowl. Talk about how that went. I mean, I kind of heard how that came about, but in your words.
Well, I think the one thing that has to, and I don't know that it was said enough, the rankings are a clean sheet of paper each week. And while those teams didn't play one another, there were other teams around them that played. And when you looked at that for the last and final ranking, committee members put up the teams and looked at their full resumes as it compares to other teams, and that's how it ended up. Again, that last ranking is probably going to be on the minds of a lot of committee members when they write that paragraph, come January. And is that the right timing to be able to do one of those before you do the last one? We certainly all understand how important it is for our television partner ESPN to have those rankings each week. We could argue about whether it started 1 week too early, 1 week too late, those kind of things. But during the year, it created a great amount of excitement, and that was important for college football. But it's that last week that I think people we might have an opportunity to talk about.